Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Myst Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author, and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today, I will be doing my November wrap-up. In November, I read 8 books and DNF'd 2 books. Excluding the DNFs, they totaled 2,495 pages, with an average of 312 pages per book and 83 pages per day. There should be chapters marked so you can easily skip around. The first thing I did in November was finish reading Solo Leveling Volumes 6 through 8 by Gong. This is a fantasy series, and for once I don't feel the need to read the description. It's about a world where certain people gain superhuman abilities in order to fight monsters inside of gates that mysteriously began appearing 10 years prior. The main character used to be the weakest of these people, but after a very bad day, he became the only person who could level up, and now he kicks all kinds of ass. I gave 6 and 7 4 stars, same as the rest, but only 3 for 8. Generally, these are more or less the same as the previous volumes. They aren't particularly well written, but the characters are decent, and the plot is a fun power fantasy, and I had a good time, so I'll forgive it. The reason 8 took a hit in the ratings is because we wrap up the actual plot pretty early on, and the rest is just kind of filler or epilogue shit. The various stories had different levels of quality, with my general opinion being that anything that was written in first person was mostly trash. This is not because it was written in first person, it's just that these stories were mostly disconnected from the rest, which allowed the author to make the perspective shift more easily. Most of the stories were about Jinwoo after everything was settled, and I liked those, but they weren't entirely in chronological order, which annoyed me. Next up, I got Nevada by Imogene Binney from the library for my book club. This is a literary fiction, I guess? The description says, Maria Griffith is almost 30 and works at a used bookstore in New York City while trying to stay true to her punk values. She's in love with her bike, but not with her girlfriend, Steph. She takes random pills and drinks more than is good for her, but doesn't inject anything except, when she remembers, estrogen, because she's trans. Everything is mostly fine until Maria and Steph break up, sending Maria into a tailspin, and then onto a cross-country trek in the car she steals from Steph. She ends up in the backwater town of Star City, Nevada, where she meets James, who is probably, but not certainly, trans, and who reminds Maria of her younger self. As Maria finds herself in the awkward position of trans role model, she realizes that she could become James's savior, or his downfall. Yeah, I DNF'd this one. My book club had nothing but good things to say about it, so definitely don't listen to me on this one. This was 100% not a book for me, which I generally knew, and is probably why I put it off until the day before I needed to have it read. I don't think I had gotten 5 minutes in before I realized that this was so much not a book for me that I almost certainly wouldn't finish. And at the 30-minute mark, I finally gave up. I found the main character unpleasant and did not want to spend an entire book with her. I also think the fact that it was an audiobook made it substantially worse, because it felt a lot more like being in an annoying stranger's head. Then, I finally got to read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is a sci-fi novel, the description says. Ryland Grace is the sole survivor on a desperate last-chance mission, and if he fails, humanity and the Earth itself will perish. Except that right now, he doesn't know that. He can't even remember his own name, let alone the nature of his assignment or how to complete it. All he knows is that he's been asleep for a very, very long time, and he's just been awakened to find himself millions of miles from home with nothing but 2 corpses for company. His crewmates dead, his memories fuzzily returning, Ryland realizes that an impossible task now confronts him. Hurtling through space on this tiny ship, it's up to him to puzzle out an impossible scientific mystery and conquer an extinction-level threat to our species. And with the clock ticking down and the nearest human being light years away, he's got to do it all alone. Or does he? The 4 stars. Honestly, this book is fantastic. I'd give it 5 stars, but the technical nature of Weir's writing means I'm never going to entirely love it. Still, I like this better than The Martian. The technical writing isn't bad exactly. While Grace will often get a bit lost in the technical aspect of the science, Weir has a knack of always explaining what the reader needs to know about what he's doing in clear and simple terms so that nothing is lost. I just don't necessarily love it. Otherwise, it was a great book with characters I fell fairly in love with, and a plot that, while certainly not fast-paced for the most part, was still quite engaging. Absolutely would recommend. After that, my brother and I started listening to Heatwave by T.J. Klune. This is the 3rd book in the Extraordinaries. It is a superhero novel, the description says. School is out for the summer, and a raging, malevolent heat has blanketed Nova City. Dark, twisted, probably evil shadows have drenched the doorsteps of her good people's homes, and Nicholas Bell, fanboy, hero, ADHD haver, is being super dramatic again. But honestly, Nick's life is pretty much perfect. Yeah, it's hot out, but he finally gets to team up and train with his steamy superhero boyfriend to bring justice, protection, and disaster energy to the people of Nova City. It's everything he's ever dreamed of. With graduation on the horizon and his future unknowable, Nick focuses on enjoying the present. Seth, Jazz, and Gibby are busy setting up headquarters for Lighthouse, their hero team. Nick's dad has partnered with former Chief of Police Rodney Kaplan to start a new private investigation agency. And Nick's mother, the superhero known as TK, is right there at Nick's side, where she's always been. Hasn't she? But something's off. It's not just Simon Burke running for mayor and campaigning to cure the Extraordinaries, and it's not even the rumors that Nick's ex-boyfriend and villain-in-the-making Owen Burke has escaped. Something else isn't right, and Nick will need all of his friends and loved ones together to uncover the truth before Nova City falls prey to the Burke family. A truth that will reveal a traitor in their midst and burn through their lives like a wildfire. This was my second DNF. If you've been following the channel, you probably know that I've been pretty lukewarm to this series from the start. This entry didn't really get worse, I just kind of reached my limit. I put it off a few days in a row, and my brother suggested that maybe we should move on and he'd finish it himself. I have a bit of a stubborn streak, so I tend to hold on to books a little longer than I should, but I thought about it for a minute and agreed that that was the best course. I can say that I was pleasantly surprised about the way things were unfolding with Nick's mom. I expected her to just be welcomed back as if she hadn't done anything wrong, and that certainly wasn't what happened. Other than that, though, from what my brother told me, I would have been very unhappy had I forced myself to finish the book. Obviously, I wouldn't really recommend this one, but I'm not sure I would call it bad so much as not to my taste. If you like the first 2 books, I imagine you'll like this one too. Instead of listening to the rest of Heatwave, my brother and I instead switched over to Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is a romance novel, the description says. Anne Elliot, a thoughtful and kind-hearted woman, was once persuaded to break off her engagement to the man she deeply loved, Captain Frederick Wentworth, due to his lack of wealth and status. Now, 8 years later, Anne remains unmarried and quietly endures life with her snobbish family. When Captain Wentworth returns, wealthy and successful, their paths cross again. Amidst the intricate social dynamics of Regency England, Anne must navigate her lingering feelings for him while grappling with the pressures of family, society, and her own sense of self-worth. 4 stars. I really liked this one. I liked Anne as a character, and she had very believable feelings and motivations. I also liked Captain Wentworth and could fully understand why he was behaving a little petulantly at the start, but was pleased with how he got over it and never really behaved actively cruel toward Anne. All in all, this is probably my second favorite Austen so far, and I suspect it is likely to remain so. Persuasion having been the first of my challenge books for the month, I then moved on to the second, The Myst Reader by Rand and Robin Miller with David Wingrove. This is an omnibus of the 3 books published in the Myst series. They are fantasy novels, although you could maybe make an argument for them being extremely soft sci-fi. I technically didn't finish it, however. While I did get through the first 2, I felt conflicted about whether I really wanted to read the third, and so didn't finish it before the month was out. That doesn't really matter, however, because I think they are better reviewed individually anyway. So the first of the three was the Book of Atrus. The description says, "The story of Atrus, son of Gen, and the last of the race of Dunni, the masters of the art, the craft of linking to other worlds through the descriptive art of writing in special books. For most of his young life, Atrus just thought the stories his grandmother told him were strange legends. Then, his time came to explore the magnificent underground realm." 2 stars. That's kind of a shit description, but it'll do for this brief overview. The Myst Reader was supposed to stand for a book that intimidates me, and I chose it because I've remembered from my high school days that I found the writing rather dense. This, however, is not true. The writing is mostly just kind of dull. The plot is interesting enough, though certainly nothing all that exciting, but I have trouble believing anyone who didn't already love the games would ever get through any of these. It takes quite a while for anything of any real note to happen, and then meanders through Atrus's training without really giving much sense of what he's learning. Most of the action seems crammed in at the very end, and it ends up making that portion feel rushed and unsatisfying. At the end of the day, it isn't the worst book in the world, but I really don't think I'd ever want to read it again. Second of the three was the Book of Tiana. The description says, "Tiana, known among humans as Anna, is the first woman from the outside world to enter the domain of Dunni. This is her story of trust and betrayal, and her struggle against the evil schemes of Veovis, the architect of the destruction of Dunni and all that she loves." 2 stars. Again, the plot is slow for most of the book. It's more interesting overall, but since the entirety of the plot was summed up in the Book of Atrus, the reader knows what's going to happen before it does. Normally, this isn't a bad thing, or at least shouldn't be, but the glacial pacing of most of this book doesn't really make the journey through the plot all that entertaining. This book also has several points that feel a little contradictory to me, and the way it does unfold generally makes me question how we ended up with the version presented in the Book of Atrus, as it hardly seems like Anna would have presented it that way, and she would have had to have been the one to tell both Atrus and Gen the story. Like with the Book of Atrus, I can't exactly say that it's bad, but I can say that I don't want to read it again. Honestly, both of these books, and likely the third, are the kinds of books that you want to have read rather than actually wanting to read them. I enjoyed getting further context for the world and story of Myst, but it was a tedious endeavor. After that, the last book I read was Celestial Monsters by Aidan Thomas. This is the second book in the Sunbearer duology. It is a fantasy novel, the description says. "Teo never thought he could be a hero. Now he doesn't have a choice. The sun is gone, the obsidian gods have been released from their prison, and chaos and destruction are wreaking havoc on Reino del Sol. All because Teo refused to sacrifice a fellow semidios during the Sunbearer trials. With the world plunged into perpetual night, Teo, his crush Aurelio, and his best friend Nia must journey to the dark wilderness of Los Restos, battling vicious monsters while dealing with guilt, trauma, and a, very distracting, burgeoning romance between Teo and Aurelio. Determined to rescue the captured semidioses and retrieve the Soul Stone, the trio races against the clock to return Soul and their protective light. With it, order can be restored. The future of the whole world is in their hands." 4 stars. I liked this, for the most part, but it was still a bit of a letdown from the first book. I'm not entirely sure what it is that bothers me about it. I think it's just several minor complaints that pile up to dampen my enjoyment. There were 3 or 4 places where I felt like the story didn't really fulfill some of its own promises, and a few minor details that seemed contradictory. I also felt like the ending was a bit cheap. The way things were resolved, it felt like the characters just avoided dealing with some things that really should have been dealt with, and I felt dissatisfied. Still, it's pretty good overall, and I'm still quite likely to reread both books again. That's it for the books I read in November. We're well into December now, but my plans are as follows. First, I've already read Lord of Eternal Night by Ben Alderton. This is my book club book for December. I've also already read The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is one of 4 challenge books I'm reading this month as a book from a series with more than 10 books. And similarly, for a series with 5 to 10 books in it, I've read Rainbow Valley by L.M. Montgomery. I will also probably read Rilla of Ingleside to finish out the series, though I already know I'll be at least a little unhappy with it. I'm going to read Remnants of Filth Volume 5 by Wrapup. I also need to read The First Wives Club by Olivia Goldsmith as a standalone book for the challenge. And for my last challenge book, I plan to read The Will of the Wanderer by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman as a book in a trilogy. This is the same duo that wrote the Darksword trilogy, which is technically a quadrilogy, but the fourth book is garbage, which I really loved back in high school. I found all three of them at my local thrift store one afternoon and figured I'd give them a shot. So if I like The Will of the Wanderer and have time, I'll also be reading The Paladin of the Night and The Prophet of Akron. I've been a bit distracted by video games so far this month, though, so we'll see how that goes. I've also chosen They Hate Each Other by Amanda Woody for the audiobook my brother and I will listen to this month. The last book I will maybe read is The Book of Dunny. I haven't decided yet if I want to finish it. I initially decided not to finish it because the writing is so dry and I couldn't figure out where in the series it went. I then found out it goes after Riven, the second game, so I might play that and then read the book before playing through the rest of the series. I'm still not sure though, because again, while I'd like to have read it, I don't really want to read it all that much. Oh, and I put in a hold at my library for Magic and Misrule by K.M. Merritt, which is my book club book for January. So if that comes in, which it will, it just needs to transfer from another branch, I'll have to shove it in somewhere. I'm definitely not actually going to get through all of those, but I'm going to try. I'm not promising something else might not slip in, though. I've got a digital copy of Rilla of Ingleside, but the rest are all physical, which means I might need to find something else to read on my Kindle while I'm out. What that would be is anyone's guess, but maybe Rilla will last the month and I won't have to. If you like this video, I hope you watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!